Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I was tagged to talk about practicing, and this is something that is very dear to my heart because most of us teachers don't, we just tell you to practice, but we don't technically show you how. We just expect that you'll just figure it out and it'll be fine, and the next week will be better than the previous week in lessons. So to be able to break it down, at least how I break my practicing down, is actually kind of cool. And I'm gonna try to share some valuable tools, and I call them gems. You know, over here we say when somebody drops some knowledge, oh, they drop some gems. So I'm gonna try to drop some gems on y'all. And yeah, so let's just get started. So practicing. I come from, as a cellist, I come from a school of thought that you don't really need to practice 24 hours a day. Okay. My cello teacher back in college at Yale actually had minimum and maximum of 4 hours a day. And he actually showed me how to break down 4 hours. The 4 hours, just to let you know, does not happen at the same time. Okay. I want you to think of yourself as an athlete, right? When you're preparing for a marathon, you don't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm gonna do this 5K run today with no preparation, all of that stuff. So that's the mentality that I'm coming from. So 4 hours, let's just use that as a guide for today. So with the 4 hours, it all depends on what you're working on and what your goal is. Okay. So let's say I'm going to talk to my 18-year-old self back in college. Um, it's the beginning of the school year. My goal is to learn Haydn C cello concerto first movement by next week. All right. So what does the 4 hours Monday through Saturday look like? Well, Monday I will wake up. My first hour is going to just be reacclimating my body to the instrument, starting off with some long tones, because we all need to make sure we remember what's going on. If we just slept and hung out the night before, you know what I'm saying, hanging out with friends and whatnot, right? So we need to bring it back and hone it back in. Sort of like, again, like an athlete working out. You start with your warm up, and then you go into your workout, and then there's a cool down. So I would take about 3 to 5 minutes in that first chunk of 60 minutes and just warm up, long tones, really getting acclimated with my bow arm in relationship to my bow hand, making sure there's no tension, making sure I'm not pressing my hand into the string as I pull and push. I tell my students pull and push the string. Down bow is pulling, up bow is pushing, as opposed to down bow, up bow, down bow, up bow. Because we all tend to do that, including myself. Okay, so now that we have done our long tones, um, here's the first gem. I practice my technical studies with a tuner. So after those first 5 minutes, I will take out whatever technical studies I am working on at that time. I'm not sure if everybody is a cellist, so I'm not going to drop, technical studies because it may not translate to every instrument, but just I take that chunk out. Now with my cello teacher, I might be working on one etude out of this book, another etude out of this book, another etude out of this book. So this is the time where you have to be very strategic. And whatever your technical studies is, that's the allotted time that you have. So if you're doing 3 etudes at once, then you need to break up the remaining time into 3 equal parts, right? And whatever you get through in that time is just what you get through. Don't try to, again, we're not elongating anything. You don't want to sit there for no 2 hours, right? After I work through the etude, we have somebody, hi. After we work through the etude, again, another sub gem is to not try to tackle the whole thing at once. I'm going to give you another heading underneath that is try whatever you're tackling, mentally have a goal in mind. So like I said at the beginning, my etudes, I start with the metronome. I start with the tuner. If my goal is to only work on the first 4 lines, I will do it slowly, every note in tune, according to the tuner. If I still have some time left over, I'm going to go back, turn the tuner off. Here's the second gem. Practice it with the metronome. Because again, I just said we're doing it slowly with the tuner. So you can't all of a sudden do it triple slow and then triple speed, right? So you want to start the metronome slowly and slowly build your way up to the tempo that you're wanting to finish the piece with. All right. For me, that first hour is not technically 60 minutes. That first hour is 45 to 50 because I need to leave 10 to 15 minutes for me to put the cello down and actually stretch. Again, like I said, I think of myself as an athlete. So really taking the time to wind down mentally and physically. Stretch your hands, stretch your forearms, stretch your shoulders. As cellists, we sit a lot. I know that's like duh. But anybody that sits a lot, harpists, pianists, woodwinds, all of us that sit a long time, you need that 10 to 15 minutes to stretch everything else out. Right? All right, second hour. Second hour, again, depends on what you're working on and what your goal is. So for me, that second hour, I will start with some Bach, just again, reacclimating myself back to the instrument again, doing some warm-ups, if you will, at the beginning for about 5 minutes, go into whatever piece you want to work on, mentally preparing what your goal is going to be for that segment is crucial, right? If you're working on one piece, you can work on one piece after you finish your Bach. If you're working on 2 or 3 pieces at the same time, or there's multiple movements that need to be learned quickly, this is your time to split that time up. Your third hour, again, each hour that I'm saying hour is really not an hour, right? We're still talking about 45 to 50 minutes. So you still have time afterwards to wind down. Your third hour is going to be dependent upon what else you're working on, or it could be the same material as your second hour, and you're just going further into details. Second and third hours, still slowly with the metronome and tuner. Always. I'm a stickler for intonation. Whatever I do, it cringes me if anybody says anything about my intonation. I'm just that detailed. So practicing with a metronome, practicing with a tuner is just crucial for me. Performance. Now go into performance mode. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you not hear me? Sorry.
No, I think you're good. I don't know what that was.
Okay. The fourth hour, I'm calling it performance hour. So now whatever you worked on in hours 2 and 3, well, we have phones over here, so it's easy for me to tell my students to do this, but take your phone out, press record, and play through everything you just worked on. This way, as a musician, a lot of the times we get into performance mode and we're under adrenaline and we're under, I'm just gonna keep saying adrenaline, nerves, whatever, we play, but it may not be exactly what you think is coming out. You might have thought it was in tune. It might not have been in tune under adrenaline. You might have thought that you played a passage perfectly, and in reality, it wasn't as clean as you thought or as clean as you remember it. Because a lot of times, too, in performance mode and under adrenaline, it's a special skill to be able to step outside of yourself and coach yourself. That's what I do. I'm yelling at myself the whole entire performance. Hey, remember that? Watch it, relax your hand, prepare your shift, and good. Now don't get too comfortable. We have another passage coming up. Oh, it's a fast passage. We already went over it. Okay, here we go. And go. Da-da-da-da-da. Oh, it's not as clean. Relax your hand, relax your hand. Oh, that sounds so much better. Da-da. But that's me. So in preparation for that, I always make sure I record myself leading up to that point. So because when you play it back, you now hear what we as audience members hear. And then you can make a judgment. So here's what I tell my students. play through a passage, make some markings that you think didn't quite go so well, play it again, keep recording, play it again, move on to the next piece, play it through, make some markings that you think you remembered, play it again. And at the end of that 45, 50 minutes, just stop. Do your cool down, stretching everything out, and casually have your headphones on and play back what you just did in that fourth hour. As you're hearing the playback, make markings in your part. What didn't quite work? All right, so that next day, that second hour, you focus on those spots. Because it doesn't make sense to waste time on passages you already can play, right? So you isolate the things that didn't quite work out in that second and third hour of the next day. Make sense? And then over time, what you'll see is, oh, okay, so that actually worked. The way that I practiced slowly, actually, it came together. And that's the whole point. That fourth hour, though, is crucial, too, because if you do this over and over and over and over, chances are by the time you get your lesson, it's your body's like, yeah, we've already done this before. Instead of, oh, shoot, this is the first time we're playing through it. Because I'm used to stopping and fixing and stopping and fixing, right? So that's the aha moment that I have with my students. I'm going to pause for a second and ask if there's any questions thus far. No? Okay, I'm going to keep going. Now, that's the classical side of me, right? If we're talking about non-classical, and I'm not sure if this is applicable, but if we're talking about non-classical gigs, because I know in my bio, it's mentioned that I work with Alicia Keys and J. Cole and Nicki Minaj, all these other artists, which is great. Chances are you can't really prepare in the same way. So I wanted to talk about that as well. So the biggest artist that I've worked with to this day, I can't believe I got the gig, was to play behind Stevie Wonder, the end of his tour, Songs for the Tree of Life. If he's the only exception to the rule, all the other artists, typically, at least when I was called, at least I was able to know what album the tunes are going to come from. So if you know that, if it's such a big artist that already has a discography, then it's really good, and it really would behoove you, if you're not familiar with the artist's songs, to get familiar very quickly. You need to at least know how the tune goes. You need to know where your changes are, and changes in R&B hip hop setting means your verse and your chorus. Because if they don't give you music, at least you are familiar enough with the tune that you can kind of get around. But if you don't know the song at all, it's very difficult. So doing that kind of legwork before you show up to the gig kind of increases your chances about 90% to make sure you get called back, because you're familiar with everything and you can just feel your way through. I remember in college, I got called to play behind Kanye West, and this was right after the height of the College Dropout, the first album. So when I got the gig, listen, got my phone, dropped the album in my ears. I was already a fan, so it wasn't like this was brand new, but I acted like it was brand new. And I got his whole on repeat, making sure I knew by ear at least the melody of every tune, right? Verse, chorus, second verse, chorus, da-da-da. When I showed up to the gig, that first rehearsal was quite interesting because, I mean, we're a cellist, so just in those kind of settings, we're not gonna play the melody. Just know that, okay? We're like the bass. But my stand partner was struggling because at any given moment, it's Kanye. He can do whatever he wants to do. So if he doesn't want to do verse 2 and want to jump ahead and repeat the chorus, he can do that. He doesn't have to tell us that. You know what I'm saying? You should just use your ears and be able to figure it out. So we were jumping around. She was having a difficult time at first. I was like, and then after the rehearsal, one of the girls said, hey, this tune, so-and-so, how does that melody go? I was like, you have to do your homework before you show up to the gig. There's just no excuse, especially now with YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. There's just no excuse now to not know and be able to look up people's music and discography. Another thing I want to bring up, that's like performance gigs. So like if I got called, for example, I got called to play behind Nicki Minaj on David Letterman's show. And actually with that, they told us what song it was, but I had no part. I didn't have a part until I showed up. It's just how it goes. But mentally practicing, meaning understanding the song in and out, da 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 da. When you get there, you just read it down. The other part of practicing or type of thing to prepare for, I do want to speak on this too under non-classical stuff, is recording gigs, like session gigs. So being able to get called and then you just show up to the studio, you have to lay down the track down. Again, if you know what the artist is or who the artist is, it kind of helps to be familiar with their music. It's gold if they can tell you what tune it is, though. They don't always tell you. A lot of times with recording gigs, the cats are like writing out the violin charts, and then they'll just say, yo, or to cello, yo, just vibe it out. It'll be fine. More currently, cats are now hiring people to write out actual parts. So that saves studio time, and it's a lot. It just saves money in the long run. All right. That was all that I mean, that was short, but that was all that I had in mind, unless somebody wants to see something. I wanted to share this story before I ask if there's any questions. When I was I say where I went to school not to drop and flex. I just need y'all to understand that. I don't flex. But when I was at Juilliard, I remember now coming from the previous teacher, I was in the dorms and there was a Asian woman across the suite from me, and she had a single room and she was just shedding. It was in the morning when I moved in. I was like, okay. So fast forward, I was getting ready for school, for class. It was like 9:00 in the morning. She's shedding. And when I got back to the dorm that evening, she still was shedding. And so my dad was like, see there, you need to be practicing all day. See, that's why they're going to get jobs and you're not going to get nothing. I said, Dad, just because she practicing 10 hours doesn't mean anything is effective. When I sat and listened to exactly what she was doing, she was playing the same passage over and over again and missing the same shift. I could fix that in 5 minutes, but yet she's still not able to fix it in 10 hours. So that's why I keep saying to my students, it's not about the number of hours. It's about what you do in the amount of time that you have. I started with 4 hours because I was in school and I had that kind of time. My teacher at Juilliard was like, especially my last 2 years with him, he was like, I'm going to teach you how to practice efficiently no matter what time you have. Because at that point, my facility was getting really, really good. And in the real world, I mean, I'm married with kids now. I don't have 4 hours a day. I wish I did. Dang, I wish I did. But in the reality, sometimes I have an hour, sometimes I have 4, sometimes I have 6, sometimes I have 20 minutes. It's all about what you do with the allotted time that you have. That's it. Is there any questions? Silence. You can feel free to unmic yourself and ask.
Yeah, anyone feel free to unmute and ask your question, or you can put it to me in the chat if that's more comfortable for you. We also have questions that people submitted ahead of time, so we'll go ahead and ask those in a second.
Okay. So I can start with those. Oh, I definitely want to talk about this one. So this is the question. Can one still become a piano performer at age 32 or a teacher? The answer is absolutely. It just, it depends on your drive. It depends on how hungry you are. I've done a lot and I've soloed with all these orchestras. And what's funny with me is that I still couldn't find management. How in the world am I in the United States of America with all these soloists that don't look like me? Well, I'm going to answer my own question, but follow. That don't look like me and doesn't have the resume that I have. I play with all these orchestras. They didn't even have to make the call. All right, they already know me. I just need somebody to call to keep it going. And couldn't find management. I would show up. Oh, just not what we're looking for. So in the classical world, they, because I don't buy by this, they put this cap. If you're not a certain age, you're not going to be a soloist. Okay. I had a friend that was a violinist, or is a violinist, black female in New York. She was, I think, the first Black violinist to be in the New Jersey Symphony. She had a long-standing career. And then when she and I got the opportunity to work in a quartet together, she was like, you know what? I want to be a soloist. And I was like, wait, you can do that? She was like, you can do whatever you want as long as you put your heart to it. I said, oh. And she quit New Jersey Symphony. And ever since then, she has soared more than I could ever. She's been on the committee for the Grammys. She did a video, like a little jazz thing, and it blew up. She has a lot of funding. She's still touring and soloing with orchestras. Like, she's just living her best life. And she is not a teenager or 20, according to what they say is supposed to happen. So if that's your heart's desire, the universe and God will put things into place if that's what your will is. You do whatever you want to do. Did I answer the question? I don't know. I hope I did. Somebody put in the chat, what is your Bach story like? Cool. Yep. So, my Bach story. I have a very avant-garde way of teaching Bach. It's funny because when I first started teaching at Berklee College of Music here in Boston, I had a special way of playing Bach, and it was shut. I'll just tell you publicly, it was shut down when I was at school in Juilliard. Ironically, years later, everybody is trying to play Bach the way that I did back then. Interesting. So, what is my Bach story like? I start with my students and tell them, and it's easy to do at Berklee because, it's Berklee, right? But personally, my philosophy is if Bach were alive today, he and I would be best friends and homies because he would be the killingest jazz musician ever. Bach suites, at least the cello Bach suites, I see it as all just written out improv. With my students, I have my students to start whatever movement they want to do, start with a harmonic analysis. If you analyze anything that he's written, you'll have a higher respect of what I just said. Killing jazz musician. He was doing stuff far beyond his time. Having secondary dominance, deceptive chords, some jazz chords occasionally are thrown in there. Just a genius. So that's where I start. Does that answer your question? Do I need to go further? We good? I think we good. All right. Hey, so I'll go back to, feel free to keep, asking questions in the chat. We're good. You be my homie. All right. Are you a lover of unaccompanied solo works? Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely. Cellistically, I don't know if everybody's a cellist, but cellistically, I love playing Casado, cello suite. Of course, Bach, that's just a given. I like playing the Carter Sonata. That's for solo cello as well. There's a piece that was written for this very famous cellist by the name of Mislav Rostropovich. So the piece is called Perslava. That's a dope piece. If you don't know about that, go look up Rosti playing it. As you young folks would say, that mug was lit. Jeez. Cool. Let's see. There is a question that was just asked in the message direct to me. Can you unmute yourself? I don't know how to pronounce your name, so I'm so sorry. I don't want to butcher it. Can you unmute yourself? I don't see anybody unmuting themselves. So I'll keep going. This question, I'm not sure if I should answer publicly or privately, which is why I wanted to ask, but I'll keep going. Do I memorize straight up or it happens eventually? I have a I have a keen sense of being able to remember what the changes are and what I'm playing. So something as simple as I'm just gonna again cello rep. Haydn cello concerto in C, the last movement. There's a little rendezvous with all the 16th notes, but if you're not clear as to where the harmonies are that the orchestra does, it's easy to get tongue tied and start repeating. There's a couple of places like that with Bach suites as well. So I just have an ability to kind of remember what things sound like, and then going through passages. Now, with memorizing pieces, I do need to say though that I also do a lot of mental practicing, and I kind of said this earlier, but I didn't explain it. When I'm preparing for a solo concert, for example, most of the time this rep I've been doing since I was little, so it's not that big of a deal. But I'm getting older, and I forget a lot more stuff now. So what I do is I'll be able to memorize it quickly, but I don't get comfortable with that. So like leading up to the concert, I always have a score with me. So when I'm traveling, let's say I'm on the plane, I have my headphones on with a recording of somebody playing it with the score there, and I'm mentally going through the passages. Um, when I'm away from my instrument, I'm mentally practicing. My husband says that sometimes I'm humming in my sleep. I think, and that's typically like leading up to a concert. So that's me also dreaming of what it sounds like on the stage, and that I'm a music nerd like that. Okay. Uh, so that's just my mental state. My boss at Berkeley says he does a lot of mental practicing too, and I didn't know that was a thing. It's just something that I do, but now that I know it's a thing, it's very effective. It's very, very effective. Um, what's the best technique in practicing difficult session in a piece? So this question says, what's the best technique in practicing difficult sections? I think that's what it means in a piece. And that, okay, I can say it publicly now. Okay, so yes, I will go back to what I said earlier in isolating the passages slowly, in that second and third hour of your practicing out of 4 hours. Um, and then it's very detailed. But one thing I will say though is to make sure you're doing one thing at a time. If it's just about intonation, focus on intonation for that, maybe a few minutes. And then if you want to work on rhythm, turn the tuner off and put the metronome on and work on your rhythmic stuff. If it's a matter of, okay, now that I have the rhythms down and now that I know it's in tune, if there's some shifts, for example, making sure you're preparing your shifts. For me, again, this is all individualized, but for me, if I'm trying to learn something quickly, I have a tendency to just jerk my shifts as opposed to really slowing it down. Slow and then go, even if it's a fast passage. So with me not preparing, tendency to be is to be out of tune. The tendency is to be not in, not directly in the center of the rhythm. So those are things that I know I have to work out before I take it up to speed. This this question, how do you deal with the fear of not being good enough? That's a very valid question. I'm laughing because I felt that way when I was little and when I was in college. Um, Now I just don't give a rat too. You know, I've done enough that if you think I'm not good enough, that's cool. I have a job. I it's good. Student wise, the thing that I would like for you all to take away is God has granted us all gifts. That's enough said. I mean, we can end the thing right now. You know, as long as you know what your gift is, it what's for you is for you, and it's going to happen. Sometimes things don't happen when we expect them to. I'm the product of that. I studied with the best teachers, went to top conservatories. And when I graduated from Juilliard, I was working at Starbucks. Mind you, all my colleagues are TAs at this school and teaching ear training at this college and da 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 da. And I'm chilling at Starbucks. And I say that with a smile because now, years later, that I'm teaching at Berkeley and now Boston Conservatory, I think that if I would have gotten that job right out of college, I would have been like, yeah, it's supposed to happen. You're supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and then that's just supposed to happen. But working at Starbucks humbled the crap out of me. Um, and the people that I worked with initially, they know who I was, and it's fine. I told one shift manager that I'm a cellist just because I needed somebody to know that I can't do certain things. I can't afford to get burned. I can't afford to get cut. I can't afford to do this. Is my moneymaker. This is not just a little job on the side to pay for prom, right? So, and then I went from working at Starbucks to working at a hotel, the night shift, 40 hours a week, which also sucks because I'm not a night person. Again, my colleagues are soaring all around me. So I got to a point where I was like, you know what? Maybe this just ain't, maybe this is not my lane. All right, Lord, maybe you're trying to tell me something. Do I need to figure something else out? Right. And I'm saying what I'm saying is so you understand too, I didn't have the time that I did to practice. So stuff started slipping, you know? And I mean, I'm trying to maintain as much as I can. I still was getting gigs with stuff. My facility was slipping. So I'm just like, man, maybe this is not for me. And eventually, when I said, you know what, I'm done. That's when God started moving things in this direction. Fear of not good enough. The other thing I will say is whose standards is not good enough? What's the standard of good enough? Is it because somebody has degrees? Is it because you like somebody's playing better than yours? Like, all that's opinionated. So as long as you stay sure on what you're doing and you're doing what needs to be done in the practice room, good. You can leave all that behind. Cling on to the people that like you and like your plan. And the people that don't, ask them why and ask them their opinion on what you should be doing. If you care. I'm at the point now I don't really care about other people's opinions. You know, it is what it is. I probably shouldn't say that. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is there's enough room out here for everybody to make it. It's a beautiful thing about YouTube. Everybody can make a video. everybody has a chance at making money from it. So there's I don't prescribe to people's negativity. Um, it's just life is too short. So I cling on to the people that are positive around me. And when I get down, they recharge me to make sure I stay positive and we keep it moving. So, all right, I'm gonna go back to the list. Oh, this is a good question. What happens when you don't get a performance platform to play that solo piece you've worked on for over 2 years? This happened to me a lot. Um, I'll tell you this story. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. And I come from a musical family in the sense that my dad was a bass player and my mom was a pianist. But both of my parents came from the South. We're a product of slavery. So my parents didn't have no kind of money. I mean, they scraped together, try to pull it together for me, thank God. But I'm saying it so you know I'm not coming from like old money or something. So my dad, being an orchestra director, saw early on that I kind of had a gift for cello and, you know, pushed to have lessons and did all of that. And then when I was 12, I I auditioned for my first concerto competition and I won. I didn't solo with the orchestra until I was 13 because my birthday's in the summer. So that kind of started things. Well, I also auditioned for the St. Louis Symphony Youth Orchestra, which is like the top tier orchestra when you're a kid. And most of those kids, you know, that I was, you know, that are in the orchestra, I'll put it this way, are they're children of the musicians in the symphony. So here is this little black girl, and my dad told me when I was 11 and I auditioned, they denied me, or 12, they denied me, and they said, "Oh, you have to be 13," and da 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 da. Yeah, well, there was a white girl that auditioned, and she got in when she was 12. So my dad said it, they didn't budge. Okay, so I got in all through middle school, you know. I think by the time I was in 8th grade, there was a young boy, black boy, that was a cellist as well. We were just holding it down, you know. And then in high school, my freshman year, there was a concerto competition for the youth orchestra. You know, the winner gets to solo with the youth symphony. Okay, cool. So I auditioned my freshman year. I didn't make it. There was somebody else that played the solo. I was like, oh, okay. Sophomore year audition. I didn't make it. They decided to have like not have a winner. So they wanted to do something different for that particular concert. My junior year, I auditioned. This other girl on cello, the one that they allowed to come in at 12, she won. I said, you know what? I'm done. I ain't doing this. At that time, my junior year, I was studying with the most prestigious cello teacher in the world as well at that time. And my senior year, I wasn't even gonna apply again. I was like, I did all this. They're making it very clear they don't want me to win. So my cello teacher in St. Louis, who was and still is, sad enough to say, the African American cellist in the St. Louis Symphony, was like, Patrice, you about to do all these college auditions. Just do it one more time as a precursor to when you go to these schools to audition. I said, oh, okay. So I showed up. My dad took me to the mall down the street. I got a back massage for like 20 minutes. So when I showed up, I was all like chilling, relaxed, like a mug. You know, my colleagues in the corner shedding away. I was just like, you know what? If you don't know by now, you ain't gonna know it. What's the point of wearing yourself out? So, it was my turn. I was like, okay, got the cello. I played. I walked away like, yeah, well, I know I ain't gonna win. It's fine. They, I think, called me and said that I won. And every year, they always wait till that next rehearsal and announce the winner. They conveniently did not announce that I won. And that was like October. The concert was in January. They didn't say that I won until January, right before the concert, because we had to start rehearsing. So I don't know why I told you that story, but yes, I've had it happen. People are crazy and it's interesting. But even with all of that said, I kept a positive attitude and tried to smile through it and just keep it moving, you know? Kids was asking me, do you know who won? Hey, it happens. There are other times. There was when I graduated from Juilliard, I did this really big international competition, and I knew half the jury. I was like, I got this at least to make it to the finals. I didn't make it to the finals. Like, okay. I went to the finals actually was open to the public, so I went. One of the students was my cello teacher's student. So she made it and I didn't. I was like, interesting. Okay. So I didn't make it through all the finalists. It was like 5 of them. And I made it through the first 3 and then I had to leave. It was so disappointing, to say the least. I have other colorful words, but I'm not going to say. The first kid played okay, but then he was like very showboaty. He like, before the last piece, he put his hand out and dramatically pulled his pocket square out and patted his head. And then he played. I'm like, really? You pass somebody up who's clean for that? Okay. And then the second person was just dropping notes here and there, just kept dropping notes. I was like, you know what? I'm good. And I walked out. I didn't need to hear anything else because clearly it's not about how well you play. But those things happen. And again, as long as you're sure on what you're doing and you know what your goal is and you can continue to keep a positive attitude, you good. That's it. Oh, this is a very good question. This one is it advisable to drop a music when you do not have enough technique for it? Actually, I want to say yes. I have a student right now solely because their previous student gave him a piece that was too challenging for him and said, I want you to learn this because I know it's going to expose your bad technique. What? I come from the school and thought that you play pieces to highlight how well you play, not to show how. No. So I scooped him up. I said, no. I'll take you as a student. I don't have any time, but I will take you. So, I'm sorry. So yeah, I think that is. How do you wish to schedule? Okay. The last question I will answer really quickly is how. Let me read it verbatim. How do you handle performance anxiety? Again, this is a very personal question because everybody goes into a performance setting differently. Like your anxiety comes through everybody differently. For me, as long as I'm prepared for the performance, there's really no nerves except for the fact that I wonder how the audience is going to receive it. I get a little bit nervous beforehand because I'm in tunnel mode. You know, I'm hearing the piece over and over in my head. I'm mentally practicing. Da 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 da. When I walk out on stage, that's cool. I sit down and then I go into, I don't know what to call it. It's just another world and I play the piece. And then I come back when everybody applauds. And then I was like, oh, that happened. But during that other world, as long as I'm prepared, I'm not nervous. But ironically, I get nervous before and after. Now, I get mad anxious when I'm not as prepared as I want to be. If I don't know the piece inside and out, if I don't know the score inside and out, that's where the anxiety comes in. I start shaking. I start, yeah, all of that other stuff that we don't need to put into the universe. But that's for me, that's when that happens. And how do I handle it? Is I just try to breathe deeply to try to calm the heart down and try to make sure I'm not squeezing anything. Because the minute that we're squeezing something, your facility, your sound is not going to be as projective. All right. Yeah. Are there any other questions before we go? Silence. You can feel free to unmute yourself. We're at the end now.
Yeah, guys, we really encourage you to take advantage of Professor Jackson while she's here. So if there's any last minute questions, no matter how big or how small, this is your chance.
Yes. I promise I won't bite.
Okay, well, if that's everything, I just want to extend the largest thanks to you, Professor Jackson, for your wonderful conversation and all of your wonderful insight that you brought, and just this incredible passion and energy that you brought to this guest session. So I just wanted to say, please follow us at Àkójọpọ. That's at AKOJOPOMF, and do that to stay up to date with our events. And I believe Professor Jackson has just dropped some of her her information in the chat. Please give her a follow. Show her some support and some love for the wonderful information that she's brought us today. And with that, I just want to encourage you all to have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. And thank you for having me again.
Of course, of course. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.